Welcome to the Mansuri Review, where we go beyond the headlines. We break down interviews from the Mansuri Show on ARY Digital TV and analyze articles from Pakistan Link and Urdu Link. Today, we're diving deep into Pakistan's role on the global stage, guided by none other than Ambassador Munir Akram himself.
It's a fascinating look into Pakistan's diplomatic strategy, particularly through Ambassador Akram's lens as our permanent representative to the UN. We're talking about a veteran diplomat with decades of experience, someone who's held some of the most influential positions within the UN system.
Okay, so let's set the stage here. Ambassador Akram is essentially Pakistan's voice at the UN, right? But you mentioned he's held this position before, and the articles in both Pakistan Link and Urdu Link highlight a truly impressive career trajectory.
What's remarkable is not just the length of his service, but the breadth of his experience. He served twice as president of the UN Security Council. That's a position that puts you at the very heart of global decision-making. He's also chaired the Group of 77 in China, which represents the interests of over 130 developing nations. That's a powerful bloc, and he's been their leading voice.
You're listening to the Mansuri Review, where we offer unfiltered analysis. It sounds like Ambassador Akram has a deep understanding of the inner workings of the UN. So what are some of the key takeaways from his interview on the Mansuri Show? What stands out to you?
Well, one thing that really struck me was his unwavering commitment to the UN Charter. He sees it as the bedrock of international law and a vital framework for promoting peace and cooperation. It's not just lip service. He genuinely believes in the power of diplomacy and multilateralism to address global challenges.
That's interesting because the world feels pretty divided right now,
Yeah.
with all sorts of geopolitical tensions simmering. So where does Pakistan fit into all of this? What are their priorities as a nation on the world stage?
Ambassador Akram made it clear that Pakistan's foreign policy is guided by a few core principles. First and foremost, they're champions of self-determination for all nations. They believe in respecting international borders and resolving disputes through peaceful dialogue, not force.
That sounds very much in line with the spirit of the UN Charter. But they're not shying away from advocating for specific issues, are they? The articles mention Jammu and Kashmir as a top priority.
Absolutely. They're using their current non-permanent seat on the UN Security Council to bring greater international attention to the Kashmir issue. And it's not just talk, they're actively pushing for a peaceful resolution that respects the rights of all parties involved.
It seems like Pakistan is walking a delicate tightrope here, advocating for their national interests while also upholding international law.
Exactly. And they're doing it on multiple fronts. They're playing a leading role in seeking a peaceful resolution to the crisis in Palestine, and they're one of the largest contributors to UN peacekeeping missions around the world.
So it's not just about talking the talk, it's about walking the walk. They're putting their resources where their mouth is.
Precisely. And what's really fascinating is how they're connecting these seemingly disparate issues. They see a common thread in the struggle for self-determination, whether it's in Kashmir, Palestine, or elsewhere.
You're listening to the Mansuri Review, where we offer unfiltered analysis. It sounds like Pakistan is trying to carve out a distinctive role for itself on the world stage one that goes beyond just regional concerns.
And they're doing it by drawing on their own history and experience. Ambassador Akram spoke with pride about Pakistan's role in facilitating China's entry into the UN, their Security Council win against India in 1976, and their efforts to secure the release of Pakistani prisoners of war. These were all significant moments that helped shape Pakistan's diplomatic identity.
So they're building on a legacy, but also looking to the future. What else did Ambassador Akram highlight in terms of Pakistan's priorities at the UN?
He emphasized the importance of reforming the UN Security Council to make it more democratic and accountable. He believes that adding more permanent members, as some countries are pushing for, would actually worsen the current imbalance of power. Instead, he advocates for a system that gives greater voice to smaller nations and ensures that decisions are made in a more transparent and inclusive way.
It's a bold stance, and it speaks to Pakistan's desire to shake things up a bit. They're not content with the status quo.
Exactly. And it aligns with their broader commitment to multilateralism. They believe that the UN, for all its flaws, is still the best platform for addressing global challenges and promoting international cooperation.
It's clear that Pakistan is taking its role on the world stage very seriously. But what about the man himself? Ambassador Akram has been a diplomat for decades. What kind of insights did he offer about the art of diplomacy? What are the key principles that guide his work?
One thing he emphasized was the importance of always putting national interest first. He believes that a diplomat's primary responsibility is to serve their country and to advocate for its interests on the world stage. But he also stressed the importance of earning respect by respecting yourself.
What does he mean by that?
He believes that diplomats need to be principled and ethical in their dealings. They need to stand up for what they believe in, even when it's difficult. And they need to be willing to compromise, but never to sacrifice their core values.
You're listening to the Mansuri Review, where we offer unfiltered analysis. It sounds like Ambassador Akram is advocating for a kind of diplomacy that's both strong and principled. He's not afraid to stand up for what he believes in, but he also understands the importance of building relationships and finding common ground.
That's a great way to put it. He's a pragmatist, but he's also a visionary. He understands the complexities of the world, but he also believes in the power of diplomacy to make a positive difference.
It's inspiring to see someone with such a long and distinguished career still so passionate about their work. And makes me wonder, what are the biggest challenges he sees facing the world today?
He touched on several key challenges in his interview, including the rise of Islamophobia, the need for more effective peacekeeping missions, and the growing polarization between global powers. He believes that these challenges require a collective response from the international community, and he sees Pakistan playing a leading role in that effort.
It's fascinating to see how Pakistan is weaving together these different threads: national interest, global challenges, and a commitment to a more just world order. It's not just about reacting to events, but about actively shaping the narrative.
And that's where Ambassador Akram's experience really shines through. He understands that diplomacy isn't just about attending meetings and signing treaties. It's about building relationships, understanding different perspectives, and finding creative solutions that benefit everyone involved.
He also stressed the importance of having a long-term vision. It's not about quick wins, but about playing the long game right.
Exactly. He gave the example of China's entry into the UN. It was a long and complex process, but Pakistan played a key role in making it happen. And look at the impact it's had on the global landscape. It's a testament to the power of patient, strategic diplomacy.
You're listening to the Mansuri Review, where we offer unfiltered analysis. It sounds like Ambassador Akram is a master chess player on the global stage, thinking several moves ahead. But let's bring it back to some of the specific challenges he highlighted. He mentioned the rise of Islamophobia as a major concern.
He's been a vocal advocate for addressing this issue, both within the U.S. and on the international stage. In fact, he was instrumental in getting the UN to recognize March 15th as the International Day to Combat Islamophobia.
That's a significant achievement. What else is he doing to combat this issue?
He's pushing for the appointment of a UN Special Envoy on Islamophobia and the development of a concrete plan of action to address this issue globally. He sees it as a threat not just to Muslims, but to the very fabric of a tolerant and inclusive society.
It's interesting how he connects this issue to the broader principles of the UN Charter, like respect for human rights and fundamental freedoms. It shows how these values aren't just abstract ideals, but have real-world implications.
Absolutely. And it speaks to Pakistan's commitment to promoting a more just and equitable world order, one where everyone feels safe and respected, regardless of their religion or beliefs.
He also spoke about the need to reform UN peacekeeping missions. What were his key concerns there?
He believes that these missions need stronger mandates and better resources to be truly effective. He argues that too often, peacekeepers are sent into conflict zones without the necessary tools or authority to do their jobs properly.
It's a risky situation for the peacekeepers themselves, and it can also undermine the credibility of the UN if these missions aren't seen as successful.
Exactly. And it goes back to his point about the need for the UN Security Council to be more decisive and effective in responding to global crises.
So it's about connecting the dots between these different issues: peacekeeping, Security Council reform, and the broader goal of promoting peace and security around the world.
And it's about recognizing that these challenges can't be addressed in isolation. They require a holistic approach, one that takes into account the interconnectedness of global issues.
You're listening to the Mansuri Review, where we offer unfiltered analysis. I'm curious, what did Ambassador Akram have to say about the current state of the UN Security Council? There's been a lot of talk about reforming it, but it seems like progress has been slow.
He didn't mince words. He believes the Security Council in its current form is undemocratic and unrepresentative of the global community. He's particularly critical of the veto power held by the 5 permanent members, arguing that it often leads to deadlock and inaction on critical issues.
That veto power has certainly been a point of contention for many countries. What does he propose as an alternative?
He believes that adding more permanent members, as some countries are pushing for, would actually worsen the problem. He thinks it would simply entrench the power of a select few nations and make the Security Council even less accountable to the wider UN membership.
So what's the solution? How do you make the Security Council more democratic and representative without creating more problems?
That's the million-dollar question. And while Ambassador Akram doesn't offer a specific blueprint for reform, he does highlight some key principles. He believes that any reform effort must be based on the principles of equality, inclusivity, and transparency.
It sounds like he's advocating for a system where every nation, regardless of its size or power, has a voice and a vote that matters.
Exactly. And he believes that such a system would be more likely to produce fair and equitable outcomes that reflect the interests of the global community as a whole.
You're listening to the Mansuri Review, where we offer unfiltered analysis. You know what strikes me is that Ambassador Akram embodies this fascinating blend of pragmatism and idealism. He's a seasoned diplomat who understands the art of negotiation and compromise, but he never loses sight of those core values he talked about: respect justice and a belief in a multilateral world order.
It's that combination that makes him so effective. He can operate in the real politic world of international relations, but he's always pushing for a better, more just system. And he's not afraid to call out injustice or hypocrisy when he sees it, whether it's in the UN Security Council or elsewhere.
He doesn't shy away from the tough conversations, does he? He's willing to challenge the status quo and push for meaningful change, even if it ruffles some feathers along the way.
Exactly. And that's what makes his insight so valuable. He's not just telling us what we want to hear, he's challenging us to think critically about the world and Pakistan's role in it.
Thinking about Pakistan's role, he seems particularly proud of their contributions to UN peacekeeping missions. It's not just about sending troops, it's about being a responsible global citizen right.
Absolutely. And it speaks to their commitment to multilateralism. They're not just sitting on the sidelines, they're actively engaged in trying to make the world a safer and more peaceful place.
It's interesting how they're connecting their domestic priorities, things like economic development and counterterrorism efforts, to their foreign policy goals. It's all part of a larger vision, isn't it?
It is. And it's a vision that's rooted in a deep belief in the interconnectedness of the world. They understand that their own security and prosperity are linked to the well-being of the global community.
And they're willing to put their resources and their reputation on the line to make a difference. It's not just about talk, it's about action.
And it's about leadership. Ambassador Akram's interview is a masterclass in how to navigate the complexities of international relations with both skill and integrity.
It's been an incredibly insightful journey exploring Ambassador Munir Akram's perspective and Pakistan's role on the global stage. What are your final thoughts for our listeners?
I think the biggest takeaway for me is that diplomacy matters. In a world that often feels divided and chaotic, it's a reminder that there are people working tirelessly behind the scenes to build bridges, resolve conflicts, and create a more peaceful and prosperous future.
And Ambassador Akram, with his decades of experience and unwavering commitment to Pakistan's interests, is a shining example of what effective diplomacy looks like.
Absolutely. And for anyone who wants to delve deeper into his insights, I highly recommend watching the full interview on The Mansuri Show and reading the detailed analysis in Pakistan Link and Urdu Link. They provide a fascinating and nuanced look at Pakistan's diplomatic strategy and its role in the world.
Thank you for listening to the Mansuri Review. Keep watching The Mansuri Show, reading Pakistan Link and Urdu Link, and stay linked to Pakistan. Until next time.